But one of the things that is wonderful about this experience is that tonight has to be the longest public hearing that I've been a part of, and certainly the most participation. And it is, I think, evidence of the kind of engagement that the residents of this community, of this region, have in the areas where they live, in their governments. Both the people who were in favor of the ban and the people who were opposed came and spoke respectfully, intelligently, and engaged in public debate in a way that I think we all are inspired by and hope will continue beyond this group of people's terms. I listened to everything that was said and I took some notes. And I want to just summarize just so that people understand that that listening did occur, and this is a thoughtful decision on my part. These issues came up in favor of the ban. The environmental impact is profound, both locally, regionally, and worldwide, and that we are responsible as shepherds of our earth and our communities to protect that. The impact on infrastructure and crime is something that was repeatedly mentioned by people, by the speakers, that we are unprepared for the kind of impact that this industry will have, that it has been demonstrated to be destructive in other communities, and that this is something that needs to be considered. And then finally, the discussion of the economic impact. And it's interesting because the economic impact was talked about on both sides of this argument. But there is an argument for sustainable economic development, not to build a community's economic future around one industry. This community has a long and complicated history with industry. And as somebody said earlier, I think very well, we didn't know that the former industries were going to leave. We had this idea of a paternalistic industry coming and taking care of us and looking for our future and taking care and preserving our families and our communities. And they did for a very long time. And then fate had it, they left, and in some cases left well, and we didn't suffer other than economically, but in some cases they kind of salted the earth when they left. And we're still dealing with that. And as a council, we've been dealing with brownfield cleanup, and the cost of that is phenomenal. And it's one of the burdens that we as taxpayers are dealing with as well. Now, these issues came up against the ban, and they're very real as well. That there is some economic sacrifice that's being made by saying no to this industry. That it would be a boom, it would bring economic growth to this community, it would bring jobs, it would bring people spending money. And that this is something that it's going to be hard to turn down because we're economically depressed. We're in bad shape, or we have been for a while. I think that we're actually improving and on an upswing, but it's understandable that people in this community would want this kind of fix. It's too appealing. Another argument that was made was that this is a redundant law, that there's already protections, and that it's even legally suspect for that reason. There is the idea that this law is based on fear or simply bad science, that the science isn't really supporting what we're claiming, or what folks in favor have been claiming, and that we should read the studies more closely and do more research, because we would find out that this is actually a safe and clean way to do business. Okay, so I listened to those arguments, and I want to talk about three things quickly. One is the research. I'm a social scientist, and not a biological scientist, not a natural scientist, but a social scientist. But I'm used to reading research reports, and so I got an email from one of the lawyers representing the gas industry, citing a number of different studies that had suggested that gas drilling is safe. And I read these three studies fairly carefully, and they did say, in many cases, that there wasn't a whole lot of impact that had to do with the fluids themselves, the actual products of drilling. At least that's what they said. It was unclear. There were a couple of wells that were contaminated, but even that was somewhat questioned. But it was very clear throughout all of them that there was But one of the things that stood out from all of these studies is to the study they said there's not enough research, we really don't know, and we need to do more work before we can give a safety pass to this particular industry. The point about the environment, our responsibility is to make sure our community is safe. That is, we're all tasked with that. We do it through public safety, we do it through police, through fire, through public works, and I think we do it as shepherds of the environment as well. We are reading research reports about an industry that we are uncertain about its impact on the environment. We are uncertain, and my view is that we should be conservative in this, because the gas that somebody mentioned earlier is still going to be here in 2 years. But a poisoned water source will be here forever. And so the conservative view on this is to, let's ban this, let's stop, let's wait. We don't know, and if we don't know, then we don't want to start doing this, because again, we also have lots of evidence of industries that we didn't know that much about, we went forward with, and now we're dealing with the consequences of it, not just locally, but across the country and the globe. Cleanup is expensive and sometimes impossible. Finally, my last point is about the economy, the economic boom. This administration and this council has spent numerous hours and projects working on sustainable economic development. The Commission on Downtown Development is about sustainable economic development. And the idea of putting all of our eggs in one industry, and then knowing that that industry has a pretty short half-life, that we're, ironically, but the idea that we may actually, find the end of this and then be back where we were when our two big benefactors left seems irresponsible. We need to continue the work we've been doing towards sustainable economic development. We need to continue the work we've been doing towards the green economy. We need to find other sustainable investments and development in this community. And we need to keep this place safe for our children. Thank you.
I guess it's me, and I've really been avoiding this. I walked in here tonight firmly undecided. I've spent a great deal of time over the course of the last couple of weeks reading everything I could get my hands on, talking to people. I've tried to read, I've read some of the studies that were forwarded to us from both sides of the issue. And then I went out and I tried to read some things that I thought were maybe a little more neutral, not coming from one side or the other. And I still walked in here tonight firmly undecided and really torn by this. This is probably one of the most difficult votes that I'm going to take. I want to say, first of all, the talk about politics, I think for a lot of people in this room, this is definitely a political statement. This is about making a political statement. For me, I don't feel that it is that way, because I honestly, legitimately see both sides of the argument. And in fact, have spent some time on the phone with and in person with some of my colleagues trying to argue one side or the other of the argument to see if I could be persuaded. And I want to say that the speaker who came down here tonight, who summed up exactly what I was feeling, and I wish she was still here because I want her to know how much I appreciate what she said, was Amy Shapiro, when she talked about the difficulty of this decision, about originally thinking, wow, this is going to be the thing that's going to be the economic savior for all of us, and then looking at the other side of it and saying, but there's these other things that need to be considered. I also want to say that I, too, appreciated hearing from everyone on both sides of the issue. Although I am going to be honest and say, because I don't tend to hold back, I am going to be honest and say that I did resent the implication that those of us sitting around this table don't know anything about this issue and haven't done our homework and are reacting from some bad place. Because I'm here to tell you, it's